Welcome to our class for today. So in today's civic education class, we are going to look at the Constitution. But before we even look at the topic, one thing you should know is what is civic education. So you should know what civic education is and also the importance of civic education. But our main focus in this lesson, we are going to look at particularly the topic, the Constitution. So under this one, just to give you what you should expect, we are going to define what the Constitution is, and that is a very important part. We are going to look at the types of the Constitution, that is the written and unwritten, should know those, advantages of each and disadvantages of each. Then we are going to look at the forms of the Constitution, that is the rigid and the flexible. So you should know all those. Then we should be able to look at the contents of the Zambian Constitution. Then we are going to look at the history of the Constitution, making process in Zambia. Then afterward, we are going to look at the Constitution making and adoption process. Then we are going to look at the characteristics of a good Constitution, and we are going to end by looking at the importance of the Constitution. So basically, that is what we are going to look at by the end of this lesson. So you should be able to follow through those steps and make sure that at all point the objective is achieved. So let us start, and the first part that we need to know is what is the Constitution. And how the question comes in civic education, you might find a question such as explain the concept of the Constitution. What are you supposed to write in that case? So basically, you are just defining what a Constitution is. So if you find the question explain the concept of the Constitution, this is just what you write. So the Constitution is a system of laws, customs and principles usually written down according to which country or organization is governed. So this is the general definition of the Constitution, and in this one it includes different types of constitution. It can be the church constitution, the school constitution. There are different types of constitutions. But in this case, since we are discussing the Zambian Constitution, you should be aware that the Zambian Constitution is a supreme law of land, and that term is very important, supreme law of land. You might find a question where you're asked to explain that. Okay, so now from the definition we have customs, and we should know what customs are. So customs, in the case you find a term customs, what it means, these are just accepted traditions and habits of the people in the society. So this is what you write about customs. So refer to accepted traditions and habits of the people in the society. Like I said, we are going to find where it says the Constitution is a supreme law of land. What it means is that is above all the other constitutions. Like I said, there are different types of constitution, church constitutions, company constitutions, and different types. But the countries or the country constitution is above all these. So which means these other constitutions are subordinate. So that is what it means, supreme law of land. Okay. So now, you might find the question maybe is, or the question, why does the country need a constitution? Why does the country need constitution? Because we are looking at it at country level now. So the country or nation need a constitution to regulate. Let me just start from here. To regulate the activity of its citizens. You know, in a country where there's a constitution, a community where the constitution is not applied, just imagine the crime rates that would be there. So that is the importance of the Constitution, or when you are asked this question, think in those lines. Okay, so like I said, the other part that we are supposed to look at are the types of constitutions. So the types of constitution, we have two. So there are two types of the constitution. So pay attention, types. So what are the types? We have the written and also unwritten. So written and unwritten kind of the Constitution. So these are the two types of the Constitution. So we are going to discuss each. And just at this point, let me just also give you a possible question that you expect. Let's say on essay questions, as we are going to discuss on that part how to write all that. But one of the questions that you expect is describe or maybe explain the types of constitutions. Okay? So the types of constitutions, we are going to start by discussing the written kind of the constitution. So there are two types, written and unwritten constitution. And we are going to start by discussing the written constitution. Now, written constitution, what is it? From the word written, it has to do with something. So civic education is simple in such a way that you just have to allow yourself to think. So long as you can think, you broaden up your mind, you just open your mind, you are going to understand it better. It's not a difficult subject. So something written, you just know that it's something that is put in writing. So therefore, a written constitution we can define as a type of constitution in which most of its provision and contents are documented in a single formal document. Single formal. This is very important term, which means it's formal. Okay? It's supposed to be obeyed by everyone. So this is a kind of a constitution which most of its provision and contents are documented in a single formal document. So that is the written kind of the constitution. It sets the rules that citizens of the nation contribute to, discuss, agree to, be governed by. Okay? So now, the other thing that we need to know here are the country with written kind of a constitution. So one of the country is Zambia, Botswana, Tanzania, Namibia, South Africa, America. So there are quite a number of countries with written kind of a constitution, and at this point I might say that most of the countries that are ruled by the presidents or where there's democracy have written kind of a constitution. So this is a viable question. Give two countries that have a written kind of a constitution. So you should be able to give that kind, those countries. Then now, like I said, under each type, we are going to look at the advantages, the good part. So advantages, we are just looking at the good part, or the good about, or the good thing about this kind of a constitution. So what are the advantages or the good things about the written kind of a constitution? One, it is usually drawn up with great care and consideration. Okay, so when coming up with this kind of a constitution, you consider all different angles in the society. You consider different social group, that is social status, race. You consider, all those things. So it is drawn with great care and consideration, and therefore it represents everyone. It is clear and definite. So what it says, it is what it is. Okay, so there are no things that are, that are not straightforward. In other words, it is straightforward. The other thing is that it is stable and steady. Stable and steady, this one stand the test of time. For example, the constitution that we use, there are some of the clauses maybe from 1964, about 60 years. So that is how stable it is. It cannot be easily changed by whoever comes in power. This is for the country and not for any political power that comes, for any political party that comes in power. So it is steady and stable. They are free from manipulation by the judiciary. They are written. So whatever it is written in the constitution, that is what it says. The judiciary, we are looking at the court system, maybe in delivering judgment or something. It is, in short, justice is given fairly because everything is written. Okay? So the ruling that is given should be in line with what the constitution says. That is what it means. Okay? It affords the protection of individual and guarantees people's right. In Zambia, we have freedom. You can move, go to any part of Zambia that you want, so long as you're not trespassing in someone's property. You are protected. No one would come, let's say, start beating you, maybe start doing all kind of things. You are protected by the constitution, and because it is written. Insulting, maybe it's a crime. When someone insults you, maybe you can report them to the law enforcers. When someone steals, so all those, it affords protection for individuals and guarantees people's what? People's right. So these are the advantages of the good constitution. These are the advantages, of a written kind of a constitution. So please, I don't think these are difficult to understand, but what I'm begging you is that under each you should be able to know how to expand these in the case where you're asked to write some more information. Then let us look at now the disadvantages. So despite looking at the advantages or all the good things about the written kind of a constitution, there are some of the bad part of the written kind of a constitution. Now, what are the bad part? Now, the bad part comes from the advantages. Let us look at them. So they are not easily adaptable to emergencies and changing needs in the society. Since they are stable, steady and stable, they are difficult to change. Okay? In the case there are an emergency that need to be handled, it has to go through the changing of the constitution, then that is now you can handle that emergency. So that is the way it is with it. So they are difficult to change. As a result, they do not respond to emergencies and changing need in society. For example, in 1964, the kind of problems that they have are not the same as what we have now. So we cannot use that the constitution of that particular year to solve today's problem. So there is need to change some clauses in the constitution. But since it is stable and steady, it does not occur within an overnight. It takes time to make some changes. As a result, we miss out on handling certain problems. So that is what it means. Then of course we can go to the second one. We are saying it tends to compress all into one document all ideas and political principles of the nation. So that is about the unwritten kind of a constitution. Then the other one, it is difficult to amend when rigidity and conservation are carried out too far. So there are some of the things in the constitution that we say, no, these cannot be removed. So it is difficult, or it makes it difficult for it to be amended. So like I said, you should be able to think in your lines in the way you can expand these. Not necessarily mastering everything that I'm saying, but you should be able to add on your own understanding. So that's very important. So that is it all about the written kind of a constitution. The type of a constitution that we are going to discuss now is unwritten. Now, unwritten, you can imagine of something maybe that is not written. Now, let us look at it. So this is the type of a constitution that has most of its provision, remember, not found in a single document, but a collection of documents, statutes, tradition, practices, and that are generally accepted as the governing of the nation. So that is unwritten kind. It is not found for the written. It's just one document. For example, the Zambian constitution, you just have one document. That is where everything is found. But for unwritten, it is not one document. It's just a collection of documents, statutes, tradition, practices. Some of these, we just know them that, okay, these are not okay. And they are governing us for some time. Okay? So now, example of countries with unwritten kind of a constitution. What are some of the countries that you think have unwritten kind of a constitution? So this one, as you even go through, be able to find out what are some of the countries. This is a viable, or this question is viable, which means it's some of the one of the questions that we might expect in an exam on this particular topic. Now, despite it not being written or being a collection of documents, statutes, tradition, practices, there are advantages of this. So now at this point, I should mention that advantages of the written constitution are the opposite of the disadvantages of written constitution. Disadvantages, opposite, are the advantages of written. You can look at it that way. So it is easily adaptable to changing condition of dynamic society. In the written, under disadvantages, we said they are not easily adaptable to emergencies and changing need in society. So in other words, this advantage, you can put it as they are adaptable, not adaptable, but this time around you say they are adaptable. I hope I'm not confusing anyone. So anyway, it is easily adaptable to changing needs in society. So that is an advantage. Okay. Okay, so the other advantage is that it can be bent to meet national emergencies without breaking their framework. So this one is easily adaptable to the changing needs of society. So which means it can easily respond to emergencies. It provides legal means for satisfying popular passion and preventing revolution. So in the case we have a problem, let's say youth unemployment, this one can be able to meet the demand or means of satisfying, that is the popular, and preventing revolution, of course. So that is one of, or these are some of the advantages of the unwritten kind of a constitution. What about the disadvantages? Okay, so all these goods that we've talked about, this this kind of a constitution has also some drawback. So one of them is that it is unstable and can be twisted easily, can be bent or twisted easily. So it is unstable and can be twisted or bent easily. It can be changed or amended according to which individuals or political parties or parties' wishes and desire. So which means that whichever party comes in power can change or can make amendments to the constitution. Okay? It is vague, and because it is vague because it is unclear. So in other words, this one is unclear and indefinite. The written, remember we said it is clear and definite, but for this one it is unclear and indefinite. Okay? Then it requires high degree of political consciousness in order to understand it among the people. It is taken for granted that it exists even though it is not written. And finally, it can easily be manipulated by the judiciary. Now, under the written one, I said it cannot be manipulated by the judiciary because everything is written. But for this one, it can be manipulated by the court system because not all things are written. Okay, so it can be interpreted by whoever is maybe in charge. So that is what it means. So all these, you need to know them. So these are the types of the constitution, advantages and disadvantages. Let us now have a look at the forms. So please, you should be able to distinguish or to differentiate between the forms and the types. You might find a question that is asking you to explain about the forms of the constitution or the types. So you should be able to know which one is a type, which one is or which ones are forms. So also there are two forms of the constitution, that is the flexible and rigid. Two forms of the constitution, we have flexible and rigid. Now let us start with flexible. So flexible, from the English, flexible is to be more like soft or easy. So in other words, this is a form of a constitution that can easily be amended. So these naming according to how easy the constitution can easily be amended. So the flexible constitution is a kind of a constitution that can easily be amended or changed by the majority of eligible citizens without calling for a referendum. Okay, so can easily be amended. Now here we've mentioned of the term referendum, and this term you need to know it in the case of terms that come where you need to define the terms or explain the terms. Referendum is one of the terms that you need to know. What is a referendum? So a referendum is that situation where citizens are asked to vote yes or no to an important national issue, such as voting whether to abolish death sentence or not. So that is a referendum. So election can be called where, or during general election, the referendum, we can vote for a referendum alone. Like in 2016 elections, we had also a referendum of which unfortunately it failed. So where the citizens are able to vote yes or no, that is what we call a referendum. And that method is only used when you are changing the difficult clauses or rigid clauses in the constitution. So that is very important. Then on the other hand, we have the rigid kind of the constitution. So rigid, difficult. So in terms of amendment, this is the form of a constitution that cannot easily be amended. Remember the flexible, we said it can easily be amended. But for this one, cannot be easily amended. Okay, and this type of the constitution is usually amended, so cannot easily be amended, but can only be amended by different bodies, such as the constitution, that is the constitution, National Constitution Conference, as we are going to look at when you start looking at the constitution making process and adoption, constitution making process, and also the Constituent Assembly and the referendum. So these are the ways that can be used to change or to amend the legit constitution. So take note of this. Okay. So now, why is the other question that we expect is that why is the rigid constitution? Okay, I'll give you when I remember the question, but it has to do with why is the rigid constitution not a representative of the majority citizen? I think that should be a question. Why is the rigid kind of a constitution not a representative of the majority citizen? So the answer is because it is amended by the special bodies which have special status than ordinary institutions such as the parliament. So because it is amended by the National Constitution Assembly, the Constituent Assembly, and the referendum, which have special status in than ordinary institutions such as the parliament. I guess you've gotten the question. Okay, why is the rigid kind of a constitution not the representative of the majority? And the answer, it is because, so just say because because it is amended, by, so we say by, then you start National Constituent Assembly, then you skip this part, then you can talk of the Constituent Assembly, then the referendum, then you add which have special status than ordinary institutions of parliament. I guess that question, you get it. Then of course the other thing that you should be able to understand is the structure and the content of the Zambian constitution. Okay, so the content and the structure and the content of the Zambian constitution. So this is the part that I'm going to leave up to you. This that you are seeing is the old one, but the Zambian constitution starts with a preamble, and you need to know what a preamble is. Okay, among the terms that you need to know, one of them is the preamble, and perhaps what the preamble of the Zambian constitution states. The preamble is just the introduction to the document. Okay, that is the preamble. Now, what does the Constitution of Zambia, what is the preamble? The preamble is this one, that is the introduction. We, the people of Zambia, by our representative, okay, so we, the people of Zambia, by our representative, assembled in our parliament, having solemnly dissolved to maintain Zambia as a sovereign democratic republic, that Zambia shall forever remain unitary, indivisible, multi-party and democratic sovereignty state, do hereby enact and give ourselves this constitution. So this is what you're going to find as the introduction of the Zambian constitution. Then when you go to the structure and the content, though this is the old one that I'm using, so please, you should be able to know the content and the structure. And of course, this one I'll leave up to you. So just scrolling slow so that when you reach this part, you can just stop it and of course read everything, then move to the next part, okay, until you are done. So this is the content of the Zambian constitution, content and structure. You should know this table very well. But my many focus now, after looking at the forms of the constitution, is to look at the history of the constitution making process in Zambia. So now, one thing that you should know is that from 1964, that is when Zambia got independence, Zambia has had 5 constitution review commission to look at the constitution. Now, before Zambia got independence, or at independence, Zambia inherited the certain kind of a constitution. And one of the questions that we expect is that what is the name of the constitution that Zambia inherited at independence? And it was called the Northern Rhodesia, the Northern Rhodesia Self-Government Constitution. And it was called so because it was meant to favor the white settlers. So that is the reason why it was called the Northern Rhodesia Self-Government Constitution. I've seen such a question in the past papers. So this is one of the things that you need to know. Okay, so now we are saying from 1964 to 2016, Zambia has had 5 constitution review commission. Okay, so CRCS, we are going to refer to the constitution review commissions. Now, let us start. And you need to know these in order. So under each constitution review commission that we are going to look at, one, you should know the name, the year, and the recommendation, where the recommendation adopted or not. Okay, what were some of the things under the recommendation? So those are the things that we are going to discuss under each. So the first one was the Chona Constitution Review Commission. And I should mention that this Constitution Review Commission, they were named after the chairman of the commission. That is from 4 of them, except the 2016. So if you hear of the Chona, which means the chairman was Chona. Okay, so Chona Constitution Review Commission of 1972. So you know the Constitution Review Commission in full. Don't just write Chona, because some of you you tend to be lazy in terms of writing, so you just write Chona. No, you have to write Chona Constitution Review Commission of 1972. Now, under this Constitution Review Commission, what were the recommendations? Like I said, you need to know the recommendation. So this recommended the introduction or the establishment of one-party state, or introduction of one-party state. As you know, when Zambia got independence, there were several parties. In short, it was multi-party. But at some point, that is in this particular year, there was a recommendation that Zambia become one-party state, and that is 1972. Now, what does this mean? This meant that all other political parties were banned and were not allowed to exist. Only one party at that particular time, it was the National United Nation Independence Party, which is the UNIP, that was in power. So only was the only party to exist. So one-party state, establishment of one-party state meant that all other political parties were banned and formation of political party was illegal. Only one party was in power. Only one party was to exist, and that is the UNIP, which is the national, that is United Nation Independent Party. By then, President Kenneth Kaunda, was the president. Okay, so that is what it meant. And these recommendations were adopted in 1973. So the recommendation was in 1972, and the adoption was 1973. So to recommend is just more like you tell them, okay, this is what we want. And now adopting, you say, okay, yes, we can go ahead. So what it meant that Zambia became one-party state. And that particular time, that was the beginning of the Second Republic. So that's very important. Now, the Constitution allows the bans of the formation of the political party, does not encourage free electoral participation, and infringes on the people's right and freedom, such as the freedom to association and freedom to conscience. Now listen, you might find the question is that which Constitution Review Commission limited the rights of citizens? It was the Chona Constitution Review Commission because it infringed on the right of citizens. That is in terms of freedom of association and conscience. People were not given chance to choose leaders based on the party that they want. But there was only one party, which means there was no any other options. So I guess you get that. That question, you find it in the past papers. I've seen it before. And the second one was the Mvunga Constitution Review Commission of 1991. The Mvunga Constitution Review Commission of 1991. So take note of the years. This was the second Constitution Review Commission, and like I said, its recommendation was that Zambia to revert or introduce multi-party state. To revert is to go back. Like I said, in 1964, Zambia wasn't one-party state. There were other political parties that existed. Only in 1973, and that is when Zambia became a one-party state. So now in 1991, there was a recommendation, that is the Mvunga Constitution Review Commission, recommended that Zambia to go back to multi-party state where other different political parties can exist. That was the recommendation. And of course, the recommendation were adopted, and that marked the beginning of the Third Republic. Zambia became a multi-party again. And you need to know the activities that happened in this particular year. One of the historical part that we can look at is that in this particular year, one of the major political party was formed. That is the Movement for Multi-Party Democracy. In addition to that, you need to know also what was the venue that was used to the formation of this political party. So very important, all that information, it need to be at the fingertip. So very important. Then we have the Mwanakatwe Constitution Review Commission of 1995. The Mwanakatwe Review Commission of 1995, so which means the chair was Mwanakatwe. Okay, so now under this one, what was the recommendation? And by the way, this was the third. The recommendation in this particular Constitution Review Commission, the main recommendation was the Constitution was the parentage. So the recommendation was parentage of the person contesting for presidents. So parentage of persons contesting for presidents of Zambia. Okay, now what did it mean? So it recommended that only one person whose parent, or only a person whose parent was whose parent were born in Zambia could be eligible to stand as a president. So at this particular time, Chiluba was in power. Okay, Chiluba was in power. Okay, so now only the person whose parent were both Zambian could stand as a president. Now, KK lost power to Chiluba, and KK wanted to come back to the political scene. So to bar KK from standing as a president, as a result, the constitution was amended. I mean, the amendment of this constitution was mainly to bar KK or Kenneth Kaunda from standing as a president, because his parents were not both Zambian. So automatically he was disqualified. So that is what really happened in this Constitution Review Commission. Then the fourth one that we can talk of is the Mungomba Constitution Review Commission, of which the recommendations remain unknown. But what I would ask you is that find out what were the recommendations in this Constitution Review Commission. What were the recommendations? So find out what were the recommendations. And of course, I might say that were not adopted, but we need to know what were the recommendations. Then we have the fifth one, which is the Constitution Amendment Act number 2 of 2016. So this was the final, or this is the latest Constitution Review Commission that we had. And this Constitution Review Commission was made up of experts. And this is the reason why it was not named after any other person. So it was made up of experts, and some of the recommendations were include running mate, dual citizenship, and also 50+1% for one winning the general elections. So 3 of the parts that we can recognize here. So we have running mate, dual citizenship, 50+1, and that is 50+1, 50% plus 1 for the person standing for presidents. Now, what does it mean? So running mate, it means that each political party is contesting in the general elections. They need to choose, of course, there's one standing or representing the party as a president in the case they win, but also required that one choose the running mate. Running mate is the person that they are going to go with in an election. In the case where the party wins, that person becomes the vice president. In the past, or the electoral system that we use in the past, the president, after there was only one person contesting as a president, then after winning election would choose the vice president among the loyal members within the party. Then also dual citizenship. In the past, one can only be a citizen of one country. You can only be a citizen of Zambia. If you tend to be a citizen of, let's say, Malawi, you have to renounce your previous citizenship, or to renounce your previous citizenship, to give up your previous citizenship and become a Malawan. So you can only be a citizen of one country. But this time around, due to the amendment of this 2016 constitution, someone can be a citizen of Zambia and also Malawi, citizen of Zambia and also UK. That is what we call dual citizenship. Then 50+1. In the past, the electoral system that we use, we are going to look at electoral system soon, but requires that one gets the majority votes. So if you have, let's say, candidate A, B, C, and we have total of 1,000 votes. Candidate A gets, let's say, 490, and candidate B gets, let me put 491. Okay, then candidate C, out of 1,000, we are remaining with what? This is 100, and also, okay, so what we are remaining with, this is 10, this is 9. So I guess we are remaining with 19. So candidate C get 19. Now what I'm concerned about is candidate A and B. So in the past, the one who gets the majority votes becomes the president. So in this case, candidate B automatically wins the elections. Okay? But if you were to add for A and B, you find that most of the people rejected candidate B. Okay? Because the number of people that reject candidate B, if you add 19 and 190 to be somewhere 5, that is 509 or something. So, but this time around, someone required to get 50% plus 1 of the 1,000 here. So 50% to be 500, then plus 1%. Then this other can be shared by these two, but this one emerges as a winner. I guess you've gotten that. I'll get to explain in detail as we get to electoral systems. So that is it, what we need to look at in terms of the constitution making process history. And now what we can look at is the constitution making and adoption process in Zambia. So how is the constitution making and adoption process? So now, so the constitution making process or adoption process, we are saying is a legally acceptable process which the country uses to make a supreme law of land. Okay, so the legally accepted process that a country can use to make its constitution. Now, what are the ways in which the constitution? So to start with, please, we are going to start with constitution making. There are two parts there, should remember. There's making and adoption. So we are going to start with making. So in making process, the constitution can be made through the Constituent Assembly and also the Constitution Review Commissions. Okay, so that is some of the ways the constitution can be made. Now, let us start with the Constituent Assembly. How is the constitution making process using the Constituent Assembly? The first thing that we need to understand is that what is the Constituent Assembly? So the Constituent Assembly is just a body of representatives elected by respective interest group, that is to formulate, amend, and adopt the what? The constitution of the country. That is what we call the Constituent Assembly. And you will find the questions, sometimes they come where they've given already the definition of the Constituent Assembly, then you are asked what constitution making process was that. So in the case you find the question such as the body of representative elected by their, or the ways in which the constitution is made by the body of representative elected by their respective interest group to formulate, amend, and adopt the constitution is called, so this is called the Constituent Assembly. Now, this body of representative is chosen from the churches, learning institutions, trade unions, civil society organizations, student bodies, and also special interest group. That is where these are chosen. So that is about the Constituent Assembly. So the Constituent Assembly should take note that it can, they go out there, after formulating this group, they go out there, collect the views from the people, then come up with a document which is a draft, and they can also adopt it and becomes the constitution. Then we have the Constitution Review Commission, okay, CRCs. We are just from looking at CRCs. So now, the CRCs, or the Constitution Review Commissions, are appointed by the president. So the Constitution Review Commissions are appointed by the president, but it is the executive wing of the government that initiate the process of the constitution making process. Okay? So the executive wing of the government initiate the process. And you know that the executive, we are talking of the cabinet, and the cabinet is headed by the president, is the head of the executive. So now, initiate the constitution making process. Okay? So initiate the constitution making. And in this case, the president has the power to appoint the commission, okay, or the Constitution Review Commission. So the power that the president uses is called Inquiry Act. I've seen such a question. What power does the president use to appoint the commission of Constitution Review Commission? It is called the Inquiry Act. So very important. Now, this Constitution Review Commission collect views from the citizen through sitting, conducting countrywide, where citizens are making submission orally or in writing. Okay? In groups or as individuals. So when this Constitution Review Commission is appointed by the president, they go out there and collect information. They come up with a draft. Okay? So that is the process is. And thereafter, I've already said this one, they come up with a draft. And thereafter, the draft is the one that is taken to the parliament. As we are going to look at it, let me not jump into the adoption process. Okay? So these are some of the ways in which the constitution can be the constitution making process. So we have the Constituent Assembly and the Constitution Review Commission. Now, what about the adoption process now? Adoption, which means accepting the constitution now. It becomes now the official document. How does it become the official document? So now, the process of approving the copy of the draft constitution becomes an official, or to become an official document. That is what we call the adoption process. So the process of approving the copy of a draft constitution so that it becomes an official document. That is what we call the adoption process. Now, there are two methods that are mainly used in Zambia. One of them is through parliament. So let us say the Constitution Review Commission came up with a draft. This draft is tabled in the parliament and debated upon. Okay? And it passes through different stages. So we can say under this method, the draft constitution is submitted to the parliament, which debate the draft of the constitution before adopting and sending it to the president for signing. So they debate the draft, and it has to pass through the first reading, second reading, third reading with the majority voters, that is of the MPs. And now when it passed the third reading, it has to be taken to the president. The president can choose either to sign, which is to assent, or to not to sign, which is to veto. Okay, so Zambia is used this method for a 3 Constitution Review Commission. Okay, so that is what you need to know on this part. Okay, then through the Constituent Assembly, which is the CA, so the Constituent Assembly can make and adopt the Constitution. So the Constituent Assembly, as you know, is just a body of representatives elected from respective interest groups to formulate, amend, adopt the Constitution of any country. So formulate, amend, and adopt. So among the the Constituent Assembly, which is the CA, can make and adopt the Constitution. And of course, we know what it is made up of: the churches, learning institutions, trade unions, civil society organizations, and all those. Okay. Now, okay, so the best way to adopt the Constitution is through the CA. And this is because it is more representative than the Parliament. Then, what is the other thing that we can look at? The other thing that you need to know is that the Constitution adoption process can also be done by the National Constitution Conference. And the only difference from the Constituent Assembly is that this one, the adoption is done by the Parliament. Okay, so that's very important also to know. Like I said, we need to look at also the characteristics of the good constitution. So what are the characteristics? So one of the characteristics of a good constitution is that it must be clear, which means it must be written in the language that must be not too technical, or that is easy to understand by ordinary citizens, which means citizens that have not been to a law school. They have not been to a law school. So the terms used should not be too technical, should be easy and straightforward. That is what it means, must be easy. So that is one of the characteristics of the Constitution, must be clear. Then must protect the rights and freedom of the citizens. That is what the Constitution should do. It might protect its citizens, or it must serve the interests of the citizens. Must cater for interests of various groups in society. People with different color, social status, and all that must be catered in this Constitution. So it must protect also and respond to social, economic, and political need of citizens. It must be stable and stand the test of time, which means useful for a period of time, and must not easily be changed at the pressure of any party or president who comes in power. In short, we must guard the Constitution. It must be something that cannot easily be changed. It must be neither too rigid nor flexible, but encourage, it must not be too rigid to avoid changes or to prevent change, nor too flexible to encourage tampering with the basic principles. So that is how a constitution is supposed to be. You might find the question such as maybe explain the characteristics of a good constitution. That is what you basically need to do. And of course, I've done the video on how to present your essay questions. So please, that particular part, you should be able to find it because it's very important even as we go on in the learning. Then finally, we can look at the importance of the constitution. So what are the importance of a constitution? Now, to answer this question, just imagine in a society where there's no constitution, the lawlessness that will be there, the killing that will be there, the raping that will be there, the stealing that will be there, because there will be no one to, people will not be, in short, people will do whatever they want to do because they will not be regulated by anything. You remember the importance, the main reason for the constitution is to regulate the behavior of its citizens in the society. Okay, so one of the importance is that it set out the composition of the function or the wings of government. Wings of government that we have the legislature. So it set out who sits in the parliament in the case of the legislature. So what about in the executive wing? It also sets up who is the head of the executive, what makes up the executive wing. Also the court system, which is the judiciary, all that structure and all those constitutional. Okay, so it set out the composition and functions of the wings of government. These wings of government, they have different functions that they play, and of course they should be check and balance. Then it ensures democratic governance. Okay, it is constitutional to have elections every after 5 years in Zambia. So which means no one is supposed to say, okay, we are not supposed to have elections this time around. So that is what we say. It also continue, I mean, it ensures democracy, because democracy, it means choosing your own leaders. It gives equal opportunity for individual development. It is owned and guarded by the citizens. It promotes and protects the rule of law. It safeguards the fundamental rights and freedom of citizens. So that is what you need to basically know. So the whole of this marks the end of the constitution, but please make sure that you look at the content and the structure of the Zambian constitution, and also under the last review commission that we looked at, that is the 2016, you need to look at this review commission in detail. Who was the chairman of the review commission? What were the recommendations? So all these, you need to know them. What was the name of the review commission? What were the recommendations and all that? You should be able to check out this. I'll send the question to help out with this part. Otherwise, we can end here. And of course, please, if you are interested in the online lessons, you can just contact the number 0976402563. If you want physical lessons, we are found in Lusaka near Kawata Primary School. Along 8th Street, right there. If you come through, you can just still get in touch for directions, and I can say we can end here and see you in the next one.